Hi, everybody. It's Bill Whittle here with Alfonso Rachel, and this is the Virtue Signal, where we talk about the morality of politics and the morality of what's going on in the world. So let's dig in, shall we? Zoe, I wanted to talk about something that might be interesting for our viewers because I think we can both tell them a little bit about our backstories. And I think the topic today would be dependency. Maybe I'll go first. When I was younger, I was living with a friend of mine who was an actor, a successful actor. He's been my best friend since I was 10. I used to play Little League Baseball with him. And I was just not doing real well, and he was doing very well. And he had allowed me to stay in his garage and all the rest of it. And I remember thinking, well, hey, listen, could you help pay the rent? And he said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I got really angry, really angry at this person who was doing nothing but helping me. And the more dependent I was, the more resentful I got.
Yeah.
And that is a very bad dynamic, especially when there's a group of people out there trying to make sure that the American people are as dependent on the government as possible.
Sure. And that is a weird thing how the resentment works. It's like a projection of your resentment. You resent the predicament that you're in, and it ends up, you end up taking it out on the people who are trying to help you out. But yeah, in where we are right now, there's a lot of resentment going around, and resentment can manifest in many different ways. And one of those things that it can manifest is in a belligerent behavior of entitlement. It comes out of that too. And, we're more and more, we're being taught that we need to be dependent. We're supposed to be socially dependent. And, the best way, and they'll lean on things like, well, aren't you supposed to be your brother's keeper? And aren't you supposed to love your neighbor and all that sort of stuff? One of the best ways that you can show that you love your neighbor is not forcing your dependency on them. And that's a culture that we're becoming, is that we're made to feel like that's what we're supposed to do, is we're supposed to be this mandate of being socially dependent.
And there was something else going on in my life at about the same time. I was trying to get a movie financed, and I was waiting for some attorneys to do the prospectus, and they were doing it for free, which meant that it didn't get done. And I would wait and call, and I'd get the law secretary, and she'd say, try back on Thursday. This would be like on a Monday. So I had nothing to do but wait until Thursday. I wasn't working. I was basically working on trying to get this thing done. Then you call on Thursday, and you get pushed back till the following Tuesday. And when you're waiting for the check to come, or whatever it is that you're counting on, life is absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
You feel like you have no control over your destiny at all, because that's essentially what you did. You've cut yourself out of your own future.
Yeah. It's and all that energy that people are spending on waiting for somebody to facilitate what they feel like they're entitled to or what they're owed. It's like, man, you could be putting that energy in going to get your own cheese. It's like, why are you waiting for that government cheese? And government cheese is pretty good. It makes pretty good grilled cheese. But if you can go out there and get your own cheese, it's a better use of energy.
It's a tough sell, though, isn't it? Especially when and I mean this, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, because this was certainly true for me as well. But it's tough when you've been on the couch for weeks or months. And I'm not talking about being unemployed.
Trying to get yourself up off of that couch. It's you get settled into it, sure, and we're taught that, hey, that's what friends are for. That's what friends do. That's what families do. Family is supposed to be able to tolerate us doing, that tolerance word. You're supposed to be able to tolerate a person doing that. You're supposed to have patience with family when they do. You're supposed to be all accepting of these kinds of behavior. That's what more and more we're being taught in the culture. So, and unfortunately, that kind of mindset starts to become very expensive.
Yeah, to say the least. That very same friend did the best thing that a really good friend could do for you. He actually called and got me a job interview at an editing, and this was down in Orange County. And the next thing you know, I'm in I want to say it was like a $90 a week motel. It was the worst motel in the city of Winchester, and I had a chance to do some extra work. The guy who hired me for some miracle, advanced me a week's pay. And I found myself with a bicycle and about $40 in my pocket total. And I just got up at 5 in the morning and rode the bike into the studio. I worked on a different project from 6 until maybe 8:30 or 9. Then I did the job I was getting paid for. Then I get some food, come back and work on the first one some more, and ride the bicycle home. And it wasn't long before I was able to get an apartment and then get a used car. And to my utter amazement, I mean, real amazement, I was much, much happier
Sure.
doing that than I was basically sitting on the couch doing nothing. But that's a hard sell to convince people of this.
It is, man. And and for some people, man, sometimes, you fall on hard times and it's difficult to get back on your feet. That I get. It's when people make basically a career of it, or when they feel like they're entitled to just go ahead and live off of somebody else. And that's like an institution that too much of the American culture is wanting in its own. But it happens, man. It's people, they're in a position where it's like, hey man, I need the help of a friend, or I need the help of a family member, and you're trying to get back on your feet. That stuff happens to people, man. It happens to me. It happens, it happens to me, and happens to people that I know. Yeah, but when it's just like, I'm owed this, and you have to take care of me, that's not a fit society.
Yeah, that's the difference between a safety net and a safety hammock, I guess. You told me a little bit about your personal story and how you became a conservative, and how somebody came into your life and basically showed you that there was a better way to live. Would you mind telling our audience a little bit of that story?
Sure. When I was maybe 7 years old, we lived in the projects, and I think the first Republican I ever met, he was an ex-wrestler, man. I think he went by the name Killer Clark. And despite all these things that I would later come to hear about Republicans are this, Republicans are racist and they're sexist and all that sort of stuff. The first Republican that I ever met was nothing like that. Not even close. How Republicans, they don't come into black neighborhoods. Well, he did. He came and moved. He moved there. He had a huge crush on my mom. He treated us like we were his own children. So all those narratives just went out the window. And one of the things that he did try to instill is like, look, man, this kind of a dependency, you don't need this. You don't. It's like you can go out and you can get there. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't pursue, your dreams. And you don't need to live off, the government trough to do it. And my mom got into that mindset of where it's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I flipping hate welfare. She hated it with a passion, and she got off of it. And that's a value that, the best that she could, I tried to instill in us. It's like, look, don't live your life forcing your dependency on anybody. You get out there and you work for yours the best that you can, the best that she knew how to teach, to live by that. So yeah, he made that impression on all our lives.
Sounds to me that you underwent a small miracle, in the sense that a father figure parachuted into your life and was able to touch your life and change it.
Sure.
You really can't talk about societal dependency without talking about the destruction of the family. There are so many people out there, and not just in inner cities or anything like that. There's so many people out there, especially young men out there, who've never had father figures and never had anyone come in and explain to them that it's not only a virtue to be working, but you're happier when you're working. And that when you take that paycheck home, that's an entirely different feeling than having a check arrive in the mail. Because if it's a gift, like from the government, then your first instinct is to say, well, why isn't it a bigger gift?
That's right, man. That's right. And we're wired to have a sense of purpose. We must, because we're always asking, why am I here? Where do I come from? We have these, innate questions within us. So, we have the sense of purpose that we do want to fulfill. And you're right, to be able to receive something for doing nothing, it's not going to have the kind of fulfilling effect that you expect it to have. The fulfillment comes with you being of some kind of service. But the thing is, Bill, we're we're in a culture, we're being taught to treat service as servitude. We don't like servitude. And we associate being of service to being servitude, and we don't like it. We have this aversion to it. And that's something that has to be canceled out.
I had a chance to do a series called America's Forgotten Heroes for Daily Wire, and it was going to come out in early November, but they held it because of the 8-week-long oral surgery that the country's been going through. But one of the second name I picked when I had 7 names to pick, the second name I picked was Booker T. Washington, and I read his book Up from Slavery, and I don't believe I have ever encountered a human spirit that was that selfless in terms of willingness to work and appreciation and humility for opportunities. And what that man accomplished is unbelievable. And the thing that surprised me the most was how Washington would not only talk about how Southern white racists were now supporting his work and letting him have land on a payment plan, and how they were proud of the work that Tuskegee was doing. But the thing that impressed me the most was how willing he was to forgive these people, because he had been a slave. He'd grown up. He was born on a plantation. He was somebody else's property, but he never took that bitterness with him. And because his attitude was so remarkable, he not only achieved remarkable things for himself, he built something like 960 schools throughout the South.
Yeah, and see, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and it may have been thousands for all I remember.
Sure. Now, see, that kind of thing is to be celebrated, because that's real adversity. Like the things that people are facing today, it's like, man, we don't know it. We don't know adversity like that, And so these struggles that people are trying to manifest for themselves to make like they're struggling just as hard as somebody else, man, that's disgraceful. And that in itself is and it's like they're dependent on that. They're dependent on this mindset. Since we're talking about dependency, it's almost like they're dependent on this struggle that they're trying to make to validate their existence, to make it look like, they're doing something worthwhile, to show this injustice that they have on them. That's their purpose. And speaking of purposes, but, even with, Frederick Douglass, he people would say, hey, man, how do you handle the disgrace of being made to ride in the back of a train or something like that? It's like, the disgrace isn't mine. The disgrace is on the people who would make me have to ride on the back of the train. That's their disgrace. It's not mine. And despite those kind of adversities, himself, Booker T. Washington, people who are such contemporaries of those days, the things that they faced, and say, you know what? I don't like it. I don't like the idea of having to be dependent on someone else. And I certainly didn't like it that people made it an institution to be made to be dependent on my services. Because at the end of the day, it's still slavery. So
That's
that
right.
stuff's got to stop all around.
Yeah, and I think your point is exactly right. That today people are dependent on being dependent. That's it's like an emotional need to be dependent and to defend it. And yeah, one of the things that Washington said about dependency was, he said, of all the people, this is after the Civil War was over and full emancipation came and so on. He said that his experience in the years after slavery had ended was that the most helpless people and the most unhappy people he found were the children of the plantation owners, because those kids never learned how to do anything. They were utterly helpless. And he talked constantly about how former slaves would sometimes put together what little shreds of money they had in order to feed the former master's son, because they had such sympathy for this guy who had been so dependent on other people's labor that he couldn't do anything for himself.
Right. And we could become a culture like that again. Yeah, I mean, now we live in an age, man, where it's like you can learn a bunch of stuff just going on YouTube, and learn how to be of service in many different ways. But the thing is, if we keep on with this entitlement mindset, and nobody likes to be told, that's the thing about it. Nobody likes to be told that they're entitled. Nobody likes to think that they're entitled. But, there's what people say and there's what they do are two totally different things. And we are living in this time where it's becoming more and more fashionable to say that, hey, we're supposed to be socially dependent on each other. And when you become like that, when we speak of resentment, people will start to resent hey, why am I doing all this work and I'm not able to see more of the fruits of my, I'm seeing more people enjoy the fruits of my labor than I'm
Yep.
seeing. And people don't seem to understand that's when walls get built. And when people are like saying, hey, I did this service and I'm sick of the state taking so much of it to facilitate somebody else, I'm leaving. Oh, or you're leaving, huh? Well, we're just going to shoot you in the back when you try to leave.
Yeah. It's like California's exit tax. There's genuine talk about if you leave California, you have to pay $10,000 or something if you have a business, something along those lines.
Right.
So last question for you on this topic of dependency. Somebody came into your life and showed you that there was a better way, and there are lots and lots of people out there who need that desperately and are not going to get it. And so what do we do about this? I mean, if you had to just do a quick sketch of what you would do to make people less dependent, what would it look like?
Well, it takes patience. It takes patience. It takes stamina. We didn't get in here overnight. We're not going to get out overnight. And I think a lot of the culture right now is really, they've got this quick fix mindset. You know, we got the short attention span and all that sort of stuff. It's going to take patience. It's going to take stamina. The places where we need to be, there's not enough of us, whether it be in education, whether it be in entertainment, the very things that those who at the more entitlement mindset, industries that they've gone in to have this influence to make this programming, there's not enough of our presence there to make that happen. But that would be a start. And making sure that when it comes to talking about dependency, it's like we said earlier, it's about being free to give. It's like it's good to be able to look out for your neighbor and do these things like that, but you gotta be free to do it. And people are misunderstanding. Like when we talk about living in a free country, people misunderstand what it is to live in a free country. They think we live in a free country. Well, stuff should be free. There's people who actually believe that. It's like, no, you've totally misunderstood it. So it's the same thing about being free to give.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson didn't say that your inalienable right was to happiness. He said your inalienable right was the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And that's an entirely different thing.
Yes.
It's great talking to you again, buddy. And again, thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making it possible. As I said before, they've been waiting for you for a long time, and everybody stepped up on this membership drive. So we'll be doing 2 of these shows a week for the foreseeable future. And if people really like them, maybe we'll do more. So, Zoe, we'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Thank you.